Greetings, this is Tanya at Labiatae. This week's video is going to be on catnip. But before we get started, a little disclaimer. I'm not responsible for any injuries or illnesses that result from your actions. You are responsible to do your own research and most importantly, use your common sense. This information is brought to you solely as an educational guide with the best of intentions. It is imperative to always properly identify a plant as safe before you even touch it, let alone consume it. Please don't put anything in your mouth if you don't actually know it's actually something safe to put in your mouth. And use this information along with the quality field guides, other reliable sources, and or knowledgeable forager to assist you. Alright, so let's get started. Catnip. This is what's interesting about this is we commonly associate this plant with something that we give as a toy kind of a treat to get our cats excited, and then of course it sedates them. But what this is actually something we can use for ourselves. It does have loads of medicinal benefits. Also, it's an introduced species, so you might find it growing in a lot of disturbed areas, things of the like. This is not one of our native plants. You're not going to be at risk for, getting into endangered or threatened species. That said, what we got going on here, you might find this blooming June through September. It's blooming right now. We're going to go out in my backyard. It is July 22nd of 2022. We'll see what it looks like then. This is in the family. This is mid-family Dead-Nettle sage. And you're going to have a lot of common characteristics with plants. Now, of course, we're looking at the mid-family. We have things with square stems, opposite leaves, and very distinctive flowers. That's going to be basically our big three for this family. There's other plants out there that have square stems that are not in the mid-family, so don't think that just because it has a square stem, it's in the mid-family. And also to be noted that with the mid-family, there's nothing really in there that's going to be concerning as far as poisonous. Of course, pennyroyal oil, if you were going to take an extract of that, we're talking about things that you find as the true plant matter, not as in, extracts and, essential oils and whatnot. Talking about real life nature. Okay, so getting out there, we're going to just look at some of the characteristics. What's interesting about this, we have these interesting leaf patterns here with these opposing, and it is not uncommon to see little leaves growing out from here as well. Not just the two. So it's kind of cool to see those little spurs that come off of there. Of course, beautiful little flowers. They're kind of a really pale, almost like super, super, super like light. They look almost white, but there's definitely a tinge of pink in there if you, think on it. A super, super light lilac. And these are just other things. Again, the square stem. We're going to see very fine hairs on here that almost make it look like the stems are kind of lighter in nature. And the typical, you're often going to see this leaf shape with the mints. Not always, but oftentimes it is very common. So how are we going to use this plant? We're going to use the leaves or the flowering tops. We're not going to use the roots or anything like that. The size is going to be 1 to 2 feet. That's about what it is back in my backyard. And these just came in wild. I didn't plant them or anything like that. I have planted it in the past. Had I known I could have foraged for it 20 years ago, I wouldn't have planted it. But medicinally, how would we use this? This is a calming herb, nervine, if you will, and it's mildly sedating, and it helps induce sleep. And that's very important if you were dealing with any sort of cleanse or anything. We need things that are going to calm our nerves, because if you do have a parasitic infection, your nerves, and they make you incredibly anxious. It's actually one of the symptoms of many different types of parasitic infections. And what's nice about this herb, it's very gentle, and it can be useful for children and infants. There's a lot of herbs out there that we have to be really careful with, giving to children, infants, and things like that. Now, do take care if you are pregnant, do speak with a healthcare provider before you do any herbs and things of that nature, because that's a whole other, thing to deal with respect to pregnancy and breastfeeding on, the difference between infants and, an unborn child is quite different. Now, internally, we can take this as a tea. We can also do an extract. An extract, I would mean, making a tincture with alcohol. And what we're going to do is use the leaves and the flowers. And this has been used historically to treat colds, fevers, help with colic, headache, and irregular menses. Now, the leaves can be chewed for toothaches. You can also dry and smoke this. Of course, you have to dry it first. There's so many herbs out there that we can smoke, besides tobacco and some other ones. But, clovers, you can smoke mullein, skullcap, lots of nice ones. Oh, wild lettuce, of course. It's a nice one, too. And they help ease anxiety. And it's best in blends just because of the flavor. It's not about anything else. It's nice blends kind of, this has a little bit of a musky kind of like overpowering, and adding in some clover and things like that's going to kind of mellow that out a little bit. And now you can also do, of course, the sachet of leaves. And that's, of course, with cats. Put it in little cats' toys and stuff like that. Now, we know that it makes cats happy, and it's going to make your cat happy and spunky. Not all cats respond to it, but a lot do. Now, if you were to grow this, germination can be spotty. With catnip as a seed, like it's going to be loaded with some germination inhibited compounds. We know what those are. Those are those anti-nutrients. We get those in a lot of our foods. We have to mitigate those, but that's another story. For best results, you want to, scarify the seeds. That just means putting a little slice in those, and just so you can open them up, because they're hard to actually for it to burst open. But then again, they just grow everywhere, so we don't really have to plant them if you don't want to. It's again whatever you would like to do. But another key thing about this is the leaves and the oil. They are insect repelling, so if you're out there in the wild, you don't have any insect repellent, you might be able to rub these leaves on you. That oil is going to break, down and go onto your skin. Might help a little bit. Might be better to have something a little better than that. But hey, if you're in a pinch, this could work. So it's just another kind of a bushcraft use for it. Another thing, this is going to be, instead of it being an annual, it is classified as a perennial, even though it's a short-lived one. Just something to know. Now we're going to go out into my backyard where some is growing wild. How it got here, I have absolutely no idea. But it is here. It blew here. It's here. It moves around my yard. Different years. It grows in different spaces. And we'll definitely check it out and see what it looks like in real life. All right. Well, here we go.
Welcome back to my backyard. What we have here is catnip that has introduced itself into my yard, and I've encouraged it. It moves around my yard a little bit, so this year this is where it happens to be. It's in a few other places as well. But before we get started, the reason this is doing so well here versus over there is because of the water. I dumped the water right there, so it's getting a lot of saturation. It's been a very dry summer. It's July 22nd of 2022. But as the water is coming from the bird bath, that's not a sanitary place to be foraging. I would not collect this for any use whatsoever. But we can look at it for identification purposes and go from there. Other people might have different things, but I literally dumped the water out. So I would not collect it for that due to the bird bath issue. And that can get pretty not so cool. As we're looking at a plant that's in the mint family, we know we're looking for a plant with square stems. So we always want to double check that. We want to make sure we have that opposite leaf patterns, okay? Oftentimes you'll have leaves that are shaped like this. That's not always the case. We know that ground Charlie has rounded leaves. So again, these are very common style of leaves for ones in the mint family, so that does help, with that. Another thing about this, how we can differentiate this from other plants in the mint family, is it's going to have like a kind of a paler gray green tint to it, and it has super fine hairs on there, super fine on this, which they're so light and white, they get that kind of that paler, lighter green color to it. And even the leaves, if we flip them, they're going to have a little bit of that whiteness, kind of, not whiteness as in raspberries, but lighter color, just a hue. It's about the subtleties sometimes you have to take into. Now, as we're dealing with catmint or catnip, it's going to have a scent of such. So you'll get that musky kind of smell. This isn't going to smell like a peppermint or spearmint or anything like that. This is catnip. This is not the, that type of chewing gum kind of mint. The other characteristic that we know with the mint family plants is we're going to have these type of flowers with these little lips. That's very characteristic. We know that there's other plants out there that have square stems, but that doesn't mean they're in the mint family. We have cleavers, bedstraw. Those are in the madder family, also known as the coffee family. But that's how world leaves. That means that they go all the way around. They don't have that opposite leaf pattern like we have here. And of course, there's another plant family, the vervain family. Verbena is another way to say it. And that's a really nice one. But they're not in the mint family. They have different types of flowers. They do have opposite leaf pairings, and they do have square stems, but they are different, even though I've heard them called that. There is a slight difference. Anyway, I wanted to show you so you can see what it looked like in real life. You know, we see about like the size, you know, I have a typical size hand and what it looks like compared to some of the other green. You can see this is a little more grayer green than the box elder tree that's there. We have some of the lamb's quarter there. We have more catnip, more catnip, more catnip down through there. And this is an interesting one. Amaranth, maybe we'll cover that in another video as well. Anyway, I hope this helped with your identification of catnip. Very nice plant, very useful. If you haven't liked the video, please do. You can also subscribe, hit the notification bell, whatever you'd like to do. Stay in touch, leave a comment. Peace and love, everybody. I appreciate your time and attention.